Hello, my name is Xiaoyan, and welcome to How Can We Take on the Next Normal? This is a 7-part series brought to you by GIC, and it is specially designed for anyone who is trying to navigate an uncertain, unknowable future. This is the second video out of a 7-part series, and in this video, we unpack the first principle, which is to learn to take the long-term perspective. If you can see your life and your choices through the frame of years or decades, it fundamentally changes the kind of results that you aim to get. And it definitely shifts the kind of actions that you may choose to do. Now, the long term is not the same as a series of short terms added together. So the difference between short-term and long-term thinking is a bit like the difference between sprinting and marathon running. To succeed in a sprint or to succeed in the short term, it requires a healthy level of impatience, speed, resolution, and singular focus as you gun through the pain. Succeeding in the long term is like running a marathon in that it requires a healthy level of patience, stability, and a sense of enduring purpose as you gun through the pain. It's different sets of muscles. In life, you will sprint from time to time, but life overall as a whole needs to be perceived and run like one long marathon. What does it take to be able to think long term? This requires us to have a deep sense of purpose or a real sense of purpose. And this doesn't come naturally for everyone. It really depends on how you were raised. For instance, some of us would have been raised in households which told an ascending narrative, which means for you, you're always listening to this story of life is always full of possibilities. It's always going to be great. As long as you work hard, work hard, work hard, you will succeed, 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 and you will always just keep winning. On the other hand, some of us were brought up in households which told a descending narrative, which is life is always going to be full of pain. No matter how hard you try, how hard you work, there's always going to be something around the corner. Something's not going to work out, and life is generally bad. Now, these two narratives are essentially quite dishonest narratives, because if you look at life from a long enough spectrum, you know that it is not always going to be about ups, it's not always going to be about downs. There's always going to be a mixture of both. So the narratives are not helpful, and they don't produce resilience, and they don't help you to endure. Now, what's interesting is children who are raised in households which told a deliberately oscillating narrative, which means life will always have ups and always have downs, and in general, it needs to go up towards the direction of a greater purpose. People brought up under the oscillating narrative tell themselves a far more healthy and happy story, which is we don't know what will come. It might be possibilities, it might be pain, but whatever it is, we know that we have always made it through together, and we have made it through because we were committed not only to our purpose, but we had people along the way. It is an important thing for us to take in that there will always be both pains and possibilities when you look at the long-term spectrum. And there will always be a larger purpose to this journey that you're on. And only when you think in long-term can you start to perceive that there is more to life than the short-term things that keep popping up. And when you think long-term, you will also see that there is no way anyone can get through this without the company of other good people who want to support you and care for you and share that purpose with you. Only when we can see that there is this very large purpose that can only be achieved in years and in decades, then can we look at the short-term pains and the short-term problems that we're going through with some perspective and some better sense of reality that, oh, okay, I can survive this. And sometimes it is precisely because you have that long-term thinking that you could endure and live through some really tough times in the short term. And as you did that, that's when you could see surprising new possibilities emerge that were just unpredictable. You would not have been able to see it. sometimes without long-term thinking, we tend to give up too fast. Long-term thinking gives you two big competitive advantages. The first is a stronger capacity to focus on investing on what is fundamental and sustainable to you, rather than waste your time or your energy or your effort chasing after all these short-term distractions, short-term opportunities. And you also stop overreacting to short-term pain or short-term challenges that may emerge along the way. Pause your video just to do a self-reflection or a team reflection and ask yourself, what is a purposeful long-term goal that you want to succeed at 10, 20, even 30 years down the road? And the second question is, what short-term pains can you handle better when you see this long-term thing in mind? And can you see whether there are any short-term distractions that you need to stop chasing? Let's now explore the second big competitive advantage of long-term thinking, which is when you start to see your life in years or even decades, you can finally focus and put your resources and your belief into building up a moat that lets you survive and thrive no matter what happens in the short term, rather than waste yourself chasing after short-term wins. I want you to imagine that a business is like a precious castle with lots of wealth and riches within. And a moat is like the body of water that surrounds it and protects it from the forces of chaos and uncertainty and change. And any great long-term thinking investor learns that the best companies to invest in are those with a very deep protective moat, which are a set of intrinsic characteristics that give this business enduring competitive advantages that can keep all of these enemy forces at bay. So an intrinsic characteristic is one that is very, very tied to the core of the business. It can't be easily removed without destroying the company. It can't be easily duplicated either. It's very innate. So let's take a look at an enduring business like Coca-Cola. What's inside its moat that has allowed it to last for so long? It has been around since 1886, so the recipe that it has been using is time-tested over years, over decades, over centuries. And it has leaned on being a timeless brand with classic values, and it has led a pretty respected reputation. And it maintains very high standards of excellence. It has a very collaborative relationship with its retailers. The price tag of a Coke is not that expensive. It's quite fair for what it is. And it is always willing to evolve its way of working. So let's take a look at another soft drink brand that didn't last that long at all. Back in 2007 in Singapore, there were two soft drinks called Anything and Whatever. They were a novelty buy. You didn't know what was in the drink. It could be anything, it could be whatever. All that we know about the fate of this company is that the drinks were taken off the shelf from 2010 and the company's website went down in 2012. It's not that novelties are a stupid way to make money. They do. It's just that novelty doesn't last. It is a short-term win. It is definitely not a long-term win at all. And if you look at what is in Anything and Whatever's moat, what you will see is that the recipes were untested and unpopular. And it was a brand that wasn't timeless or classic. It was more like a one-joke or one-time brand. And the standards of excellence were average to unknown. It didn't last that long for us to figure it out. The relationship it had with retailers was average, and the price was fair. And what was clearest, though, is that it was unwilling to evolve its way of working. Nobody knows what happened to it. So an anything or whatever kind of short-term thinking will never produce an economic moat of competitive advantages. It has an extremely high chance of failure when things change, or when things are uncertain, or when things are chaotic. We too can adopt an anything and whatever kind of short-term thinking for ourselves. And if we do that, we will not produce our own professional moat of competitive advantages. We too can have an average reputation, average standards of excellence, average relationship with other people, and we too can be very unwilling to evolve our way of working and are not terribly interested in testing out recipes of products or services to offer into the marketplace. And like that soft drink company, we too will not last. However, the converse is true. you can build a very deep professional moat of competitive advantages that will help you endure for years or decades. And it's the same classic concepts of, do you have something you're uniquely interested in and are good at developing it? Do you maintain an above average reputation, timeless values? Do you have exceptional dealings with money? All of this will help you endure for years and decades. And this takes long-term thinking and long-term investments into yourself. Now, you can't build that professional moat without also investing in a personal moat. And this is something we often neglect, that a personal moat is also worthy of investing in, and it is also a set of competitive advantages. A personal moat is built through self-care and self-work. So what self-care means is recharging yourself through sleep and exercise and nutrition and rest and play and prayer and meditation. And most importantly, having intentional, energizing, encouraging human connections. Not networking, but real human connections. And this must be complemented by self-work. Self-work is looking at changing yourself or transforming yourself, not just simply recharging yourself. You want to redefine the way you work. And this is through developing self-awareness, developing your character. This can be done through therapy, feedback, counseling, journaling. You want to deliberately build up your social and emotional skills, perhaps through coaching or developing a skill like facilitation. And you're also constantly learning new skills and new perspectives so that you're always maturing as a person, not just a professional. So at this point, it is a good time to hit the pause button and do a self-reflection or a team reflection. What is inside our organization's moat that can help it last through difficult times? And for you personally and professionally, what is inside your individual moat that can help you last through difficult times? Are there any challenges to taking the long-term perspective? Of course. Let's explore 3. The first, don't be stubborn. You want to be open to changing your mind and your choices along the way as you get new information. Thinking long-term doesn't mean being stubbornly long-term about things that are clearly not making any more sense. In long-term thinking, you need to avoid a rigid buy and hold stance. And what that means is, I've already put in 10 years into this, I've already sunk in like $20,000. I have already put in so much into a losing proposition. I don't want to let it go. And this is called sunk cost fallacy. The second challenge is, you don't want to just set up a long-term goal. You want to set up a long-term system. Goals are great for giving you a sense of direction, but you're not going to get to the goal without having a system of habits and processes that will help you progress towards your goal through small, continuous improvements. For example, you might have a long-term goal called, I want to lose weight, but you're not going to lose weight without setting up some kind of system that is continuous and incremental. And that can mean, well, every day I'm going to walk for 30 minutes. Every day I'm going to make sure I cut sugar, I cut carbs. And often we don't reach our goals because we do not set up systems. It's very easy to declare a goal. It's much harder to design and implement and persist in supporting a long-term system. The third challenge is more of a people thing. If you choose the long-term perspective, you need to communicate clearly and kindly why you are making the new choices that you're making. Because remember, long-term thinking is not common. If you want to succeed in the long term, you need to get support, ongoing support for your long-term goals. And you need to learn to understand where people are coming from, and you need to be understood by others. So the rule of thumb in communication that will really, really help you through this long term is to communicate clearly and kindly to people what's going on for you and why does this purpose matter to you so much. And be open to new data and be open to people's perspectives, because again, you never know what they can see. And you also want to be clear that you are not in any sunk cost fallacy here. Thank you for learning together with me in this session. This was the second out of a 7-part video series. If you found this session or this series useful, then please forward it to someone that you want to journey into the future with. I will see you in the next session. Thank you for being here.